The ANC is reviewing its coalition agreements at municipal level ahead of next year's national election.
It comes amid speculation that the party is considering cutting ties with the economic freedom fighters following complaints from some ANC councillors. The party currently co-governs with the Red Berets in Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg, alongside the support of other smaller parties.
Speaking earlier today, the ANC's national spokesperson, Mahlengu Mutsiri, said that the instruction has come from the National Executive Committee.
On the matter of the hung municipalities, especially where we are in a coalition with this or that party, I also have indicated that we are currently reviewing all our coalition agreements. We're in the process of doing that. We're reviewing that. The National Executive Committee has directed that that has got to be reviewed. What the conclusion is going to be is a subject of course, proper constitutional structures, but it's a process that is underway through the relevant coalitions task.
Well, for more on the story, we're joined by political analyst Dr. Ongama Mntimka. Dr. Mtika, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. So, for the parties that have already, made it clear publicly who they're going to be in coalition with and partnering with going into next year, this is really somewhat of a non-brainer unless developments happen between now and then. But for organizations like the ANC, the EFF, that have deliberately chosen to stay out of specific coalition agreements, is this going to be an important moment to try and determine where they will be hedging their bets, especially if they find themselves in moments where they need those votes?
So I think, first of all, Kathy, good evening to you, Tembekile and your viewers. What's consistent from surveys that have come out since August 2021 is that the ANC, when one looks at the average results from all of those surveys, is going to be settling at the mid-40s next year as an outcome. So deciding what its approach is going to be to coalitions is crucial, and therefore it is important for it to think about in what ways do current arrangements politically in coalitions impede or enable its agenda for elections next year. One may look at how it wants to review its relationships with existing coalitions from a selfish perspective. But if one thinks long-term in terms of what the ANC wants from next year's elections, some of these relationships do not work anyway if the citizens of these areas, were to be, their views were to be factored in. But in other areas, there's a sense in which things are stabilizing, and for the ANC to act in this way, it will destabilize what has come to be relative stability. But nonetheless, this is something that it has to do, given the fact that it understands that it's under siege next year, facing dwindling support, but also with an EFF as a main ally that is poised to grow a little further next year.
And that's precisely a part of the point, Dr. Mntimka, that, while at a local government level, of course, a lot is at stake, especially in the big metros, the national elections color the game completely differently. The stakes have never been higher, and we now have stronger and stronger messages coming out of the ANC that there are people who feel very strongly about this party working with the EFF. Now, do you think that that position is going to change at all? Because what we're not seeing is stepping back from that position that says the coalitions in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni cannot see the light of day in as far as provincial and national politics is concerned.
So here's my anxiety with the thought process of the ANC. I can understand the political imperatives of coming out of those coalitions, especially where the political imperatives of the ANC are aligned to frustrations of residents in municipalities. However, if there is a misalignment where you find that there's some stuff that works. It's a pity, Kathy, I can only talk about this in abstract because I'm not living in these cities, and also, the data as to what is working and what's not is lagging behind the real developments. So if the ANC cannot be irresponsible, this is my point. How the ANC walks out of these coalitions should not be irresponsible, should not throw those municipalities in tatters. Because, one, they are not, it's either they should be prepared to run minority governments by themselves, or they are prepared to, they are going to trigger events in those municipalities that result in another party being able to form a coalition and being able to govern. But I cannot envisage a situation where the ANC is going to say politically we need to come out of these coalitions, but at the same time we are prepared for the sake of the residents of these cities to ensure that we create an enabling political environment for whoever is going to run a coalition. The point is that there is going to be instability as part of this path that the ANC wants to take, and how it is implementing this needs a lot of consideration for the people of those cities beyond its political imperatives.
Let's talk about voters, Dr. Mntimka. To what extent do you think voters are going to be wanting to hold their political organizations accountable, especially when it comes to who these parties are entering into coalitions with? Because I think more and more we are hearing the voice of the electorate that says, but I didn't vote for you, let's say, as the ANC, to go into coalition to be with the EFF.
It's an interesting one for the voter. One, we know that the South African voter from the late 2000s started becoming a lot more interested in democracy for itself, voting and participating in elections, but also a lot more, since 94, has been sensitive to substantive things, such as, for example, as a result of the vote, how is my life changing? Initially, the ANC was gaining a lot of traction as a result of connecting people to services that they didn't have before. But in the period, in the 2010s, what we've seen is that there has been an increased focus on the quality of those services. If you look at many municipalities by 2011, a lot of the residents had been connected, so access to services had been provided. As a result of that, the shift from a voter preference point of view got to be about the quality of those services, which from 1994 to the late 2000s, they were provided with. So having said that, the voter is concerned about the likelihood to perform, or what we call regime performance, as much as it is concerned about what do certain associations imply from a policy preference point of view. So, for example, but what we have not been able to factor in is how much punishment, as it were, derives from simple failures of governance, or derives from displeasure of voters with the choices that these parties make at a coalition-making level. We can assume, though, that the average voter, in my view, in South Africa, is a centrist voter. They are a moderate voter. They prefer, an approach to citizenship which is not alienating. So parties that are on the fringes, that are campaigning on the basis of, either the Swart Gevaar or the Rooi Gevaar, or on the basis of wanting to reduce the role of the state, those parties are not going to thrive, and voters may be sensitive to the associations between parties on extreme opposites in terms of the ideological divide. How much that translates to voting behavior, in my view, is still important, but less than performance and perceptions of corruption, among other things.
All right, fair enough. political analyst Dr. Ongama Mntimka.